Okay, now here's how to take the points that we've learned in the first quadrant in the previous two videos. How do we take those and extend them all around the unit circle? How do we find, for example, the point here at 5 pi over 6, or the point over here at 7 pi over 4? How do we find the x and y coordinates of each of those points? And it turns out that it's easier than it sounds. For example, anytime the fraction is over 3, so there, 2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3, 5 pi over 3, it's easier to remember that way, I think, than trying to remember at 60, at 120, at 240, and at 300. I think that radians are easy because you see the over 3 in each of those cases. Anytime the radian measure is over 3, the point is going to look just like that, 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. So over here at 2 pi over 3, the point is going to look like that, 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. However, this point is over in the second quadrant. That means if I'm over here in the second quadrant, my x is going to be negative and my y is above here. It's going to be positive. That means this point is really negative 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Down here at the 4 pi over 3, same form, still going to look like 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. But down here in the third quadrant, it's below the y-axis, it's to the left of the x-axis. Both coordinates would be negative. Negative 1/2, negative the square root of 3 over 2. And finally, over here, at 5 pi over 3, same form, 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. The x is positive, it's to the right of the y-axis. The y is negative, it looks like this, 1/2 negative the square root of 3 over 2. We could do the same thing for every other point. Every pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, all of those have the form square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. So over here, at 3 pi over 4, we've got square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. The x is negative because it's over here. The y is positive because it's up top. So it's negative square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Down here, at the 5 pi over 4, still square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. But they're both going to be negative in the third quadrant. Over here, 7 pi over 4, still going to have the same form, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. But the y will be negative and the x will be positive. Finally, so pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6, those points. Also, I'm kind of ignoring the degrees because I think it's easier to remember these in radians because it's easier to remember that all of the over 6s have the same form than to remember that the 330, the 30, the 150, and the 210 all have the same form. All the pi over 6s. Be careful. Something like 4 pi over 6, you need to reduce it. That would give you 2 pi over 3. 4 pi over 6 is really a pi over 3 form. So if it's pi over 6 form, 5, 7, 11 pi over 6, even after it's reduced, you get the form square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. Over here, the y is negative. At 7 pi over 6, still the same form, square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, but they're both negative. Up here at 5 pi over 6, square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, but the x is negative and the y is positive. Finally, down here, straight down, the x is 0, the y is 1. Remember, this is the point I made a mistake on in the first video. You should go back and make sure you've got that cleared up. Over here, straight over 1, so the x is negative 1 and the y is 0. There's a picture of the complete unit circle. You should probably take a screenshot of that somehow and fill in one on your own and begin to learn them. Remember, the easy way to learn them is just to remember the things in the first quadrant and then extend them all across the unit circle.